Jeff Gordon leading Kurt Busch. You see the margin is just about 2 seconds, and Dale Jr. has caught Kurt Busch.
And Dale Jr.'s car looks really good, and of course Gordo's sitting out there all by himself right now.
You know, talking to Dale Jr.'s crew this morning, they said, you know, we were a little unhappy with our car on the short runs, but real happy in the long runs, and that's normally what we have here is long green runs.
Long green runs. But, you know, those guys came out here and tested, and Michael told me he and Dale Jr. and all, they were so happy with their cars when they left here. So it doesn't surprise me to see them running well.
You want to know a guy that has picked some positions up? Jimmy Spencer in the 7 car. He started back in 15th, and he's been getting about a car every 2 or 3 laps. These guys came out here and tested as well, Darrell, and all they did for 2 days is work on race setup. There you see on the Fox tracks, he's about 8 seconds behind our leader, Jeff Gordon. But Jimmy Spencer has always ran well at this racetrack, actually won a Busch race here.
Well, one thing I'm seeing, Larry, off of all these cars, though, is they're running really, really high off turn 4 down there, higher than I think I've ever seen them come off of there. That outside groove is really working good for everybody.
2 other big movers are Sterling Marlin and Todd Bodine, the 54, each of whom have picked up 10 positions.
Just Todd Bodine, you know, he set on pole here last year with a new track record at that time, and it was the only top 5 that he had last year was right here.
Todd had a birthday on Thursday, turned 39 on Thursday.
You want me to sing now, or you want me to wait?
Oh, we better wait. We're a little early in the telecast.
Let's wait till he turns 40.
Yeah, and Booty, you know, Booty Barker had his birthday today, too.
Crew chief for Dave Bland.
Yeah. And speaking of 40, that's Sterling's number. And he's gained 11 positions since they dropped the green flag. The defending champion of this race is right now in 23rd.
Started back in 34th.
There you go. Biggest movers.
And I tell you, he likes this race car, even though it has a new body on it because of the body location changes in the nose. This is the same car that he won here in Darlington with last year, the same chassis, and the same chassis that Jamie McMurray won at Charlotte, Lowe's Motor Speedway in October. So they like this chassis.
Jeff and I were talking down there, you know, and we feel like Sterling's one of those guys we're going to hear a whole lot about until maybe the middle of the race, toward the end of the race, because his car is set up for the long haul. And you didn't hear a lot about him here last year until the end of the race.
Right behind him, Dale Jarrett and Bill Elliott were riding with Jarrett. And Elliott, Bill is ill. And that's no pun. He's got the flu. He's got something. The car just hasn't worked too well, and he's kind of under the weather as they go 3 wide around Sterling. Jeannie?
Well, interesting, guys, is he's teamed up with 2 rookies. He didn't test out here at Las Vegas. He let the young kids make the trek across the country. He actually, Sterling said, we're going to go with some of their notes that they had and then, you know, just experiment with some of what we have. And so far it is working. It's the spring combinations, of course, that he's working on from last year that found him success at this track. So far, so good.
Yeah, Jeannie, I know that group, they went to Kentucky and tested, which a lot of people go there because that don't get charged against one of your 5 tests. And this is a in-house Robert Yates chassis. It's the same chassis that they ran at Homestead the end of last year.
All right, let's set the interval for you from Jeff Gordon, who has led all 20 laps, coming around to lead 21. Not a prohibitive favorite here, but a strong favorite. Kurt Busch, I guess, was second on the odds chart.
Yeah, he was. I think he'll have. You just got to look at his performance over the last half of last year and the beginning of this year. And every time you look up at the end of the day, his numbers up there in the first 2 or 3.
So there's Gordon. Here is Busch. That's what 1.9 seconds looks like from first to second. We'll go back and pick up 7th place, Ryan Newman and Michael Waltrip.
But Larry, don't you think if you started off with your car really, really good right now, that you're going to have to make some changes, adjustments on it later on, because the track's going to go through quite a bit of change?
But when I go back to like when Jeff Gordon won here a couple of years ago, that's one thing I think that Jeff Gordon has always been good at, giving his crew chief feedback to the changes the racetrack's going through. That's certainly something Ray Evernham was always really good at, making those adjustments. And I see Robbie Loomis now. He knows what Jeff's needing as this racetrack changes.
But there's a problem here. He won this race 2 years ago. There was $1 million at stake. There was the no bull race here,
right.
$1 million. He seemed to excel. He seemed to be, every time there was one of those races, he seemed to be up there getting that $1 million. So we'll see if what the incentive is today, other than just the fact he wants to win.
Now, Darrell, did you ever look at the payoff sheet before the race started?
That's the funniest thing. Guys that have never won a race in their whole life say, man, I'm going to that race. It pays $1,000 to win.
Well, that's great if you can win it.
They never look at how much last place paid.
Right.
See our Fox tracks, this is on Elliott Sadler, the 38 car. He's almost a half a lap behind our leader, Jeff Gordon. Now, he started back in 23rd. He's not made that much of a move. They have struggled with this race car. I talked to Robert Yates this morning and Todd Parrott, who is now director of competition. I said, what is the difference in the 38 and 88? Because Dale Jarrett was good in practice. They said Elliott Sadler is running a store-bought chassis. Dale Jarrett's running an in-house chassis. I said, Todd, when are you going to run the same chassis on both cars in-house? He said, can you say starting next week?
Right.
I think there'll be all in-house chassis from now on for the 38 Elliott Sadler and the 88 Dale Jarrett.
Well, you know, when you're building your own cars and you haven't always done that, you want to be sure before you start building a lot of them that they're good, you know. So you got to go kind of test them and be sure that they're going to do what you expect them to do before you have a whole house full of them. I know Roush made that mistake a couple of years ago. They built all their own stuff in-house, and I think they still do a lot of it. But they went in a direction that the drivers didn't really like.
Watching from Johnny Benson as he battled his teammate Jerry Nadeau, and up front Jeff Gordon holding about 1.9 seconds on Kurt Busch. Now the lap times have dropped off about 1.5 seconds from the start of this race. Steve Burns.
Well, pole sitter Bobby Labonte said his car was neutral, which is pretty good when the race started, but now it's a little bit tight in the center of the corners. But crew chief Michael Fatback McSwain said that's a good thing. We understand where your car is right now. And also, DW, interesting to note, even though he's in a Chevrolet the same as Jeff Gordon, the tape configuration, how they have that tape across the nose is a little bit different on the 18 than the 24.
Well, and I'm not surprised because I think these Chevrolet teams are still together as a group and then as a team are going through a learning period on how to tape these cars. But I think that's one reason Bobby Labonte fell back at the start of the race. His car is neutral, and now his lap times are almost mirroring leader Jeff Gordon.
One thing I noticed on Gordon's car, he needs to stay out front, I believe, because they have got that baby taped up almost like they're qualifying.
And when they do that, she will run fast down the straightaway.
Better stay out of traffic.
NASCAR on Fox is brought to you by Singular Wireless. National coverage, affordable calling plans, and a really fast car. By Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse. Lowe's, improving home improvement. By Napa Auto Parts. And by Dodge. You can take life as it comes, or you can grab life by the horns. Dodge. 32 laps complete in the UAW Daimler Chrysler 400 at Las Vegas. Jeff Gordon has led every lap so far.
And right around the bottom he goes, but right behind him there's a whole bunch of guys. You see Michael coming off turn 4 back there. I've never seen him run so high through that end of the racetrack so early, Larry. I mean, they're way out there in the really what I'd call the gray stuff, the loose stuff.
They're almost creating a third groove up there. We didn't see a groove that high yesterday in the Busch race.
See, there's Michael again, high, which he likes to run up there like that, but he passed Jimmy Johnson. Seems to be making some pretty good time.
And you know, Darrell, the thing that surprised me a little bit about that, and I'd be a little nervous as I was one of the engine builders, a lot of guys, based on the race pace slowing down yesterday in the Busch race, they were putting low gears in those cars. So the higher you run, the more RPMs you're going to turn too.
Yeah, you get back in the throttle and you carry a lot of exit speed off of the corner down the straightaway. So these engines won't take, they'll take $9 grand, but they start turning much over that, and you're in no man's land.
Jeff Gordon has put Kenny Wallace a lap down, and now the Derek Cope car falling a lap down to the race leader. Let's go to the leader's pit, Matt Yoakum.
Mike, back on lap 14, Jeff Gordon reported into Robbie Loomis. The car was a little loose on exit. We got back into the gas. About lap 27, he told Robbie Loomis the car had gone to the tight side. Tight side big time in the center of the corner, but especially up off turns 3 and 4. So now what they're doing is talking about what changes they're going to make on that stop. Dale Earnhardt Jr. running in second. You guys are talking about the gear. That's exactly what they're doing. They're throwing away fuel mileage somewhat, going for a little bit different gear selection. To Dick Berggren.
Car number 97, Kurt Busch. Chassis not quite right on the car. He ran a lot of laps running in second place. He's dropped back to 4th right now. The problem, the car is a little bit tied in, a little bit free off. Busch has called for the specific changes that he wants, as Michael Waltrip has just gone by him. Also, car number 9, Bill Elliott, not feeling well behind the wheel of the car. Uncertain if he could make it all the way today. I just talked to his wife, Cindy. She's not positive, but she says she thinks he's feeling a little bit better in the car now than he was before he got in the car.
Vic, I think the reason he's feeling better, he's got a pretty good race car. He started back in 30th, and he's up to 19th, just past Dale Jarrett right there in the 88 car. That makes you feel better when you got a good race car.
I know when I've been feeling ill, not well, even when I've been hurt, the most comfortable I was and the most relaxed I was when I was sitting in my race car. The heat and the seat and everything, you just kind of snuggle down in there, you forget all that and go racing.
And that's the best that Bill's car has been all weekend. He didn't practice well and qualified back in 30th.
Here's a news flash for you. The two fastest cars out there are the DEI cars, Michael and Dale Jr. They're making some pretty big moves right now. And
one of them almost scraped the wall in turn 2 this lap. That was Michael.
Well, here's a news flash for you. A little over halfway through this fuel run, these tires are starting to give up. And what helps a car when tires start to give up is downforce, and 5 of the top 6 cars are Chevrolets. Now, Jeff Gordon here in the 24 car, I want to go back and put a period on what Matt Yoakum was talking about. He was a little bit loose. Now he's tight. The car's not wanting to turn. I just mentioned we're a little over past half a fuel run. When you burn that fuel off, it gains nose weight, and that starts making the car pick up a push and not turn.
Yeah, one of the things we always tried to do in practice was run the car with low fuel, run about half the fuel out of it, and put old tires on just to see where the car would be halfway through a run.
We're fixing to have 5 Chevys in the top 5 right there. Jimmy Johnson in the 48 car, he goes by Kurt Busch in the 97.
Well, I think this is one of the big fears that everybody's had based on Daytona was what were these Chevrolets going to do? Rockingham was a big surprise, but what are they going to do when they get down here to Las Vegas? I think we see what they're going to do.
There's the relative position. Now, one of the enhancements we've added this year to NASCAR on Fox is on that second row, laps to pit. Now, right now it's all the same because the cars are on their first fuel run, but as we have green flag pit stops, some cars will get out of sequence. So if your favorite driver was up to the front when you went to the refrigerator, you come back and he's in the back, you'll see maybe it's because he recently made a stop.
This is a nice shot, and you can see right there that Jimmy Johnson's very comfortable in that race car. Not a lot of effort, not really tugging on that wheel, just really smooth. Car is really working well for him. Well, he's got traffic right there. He had to juke on her a little bit, but it looks very relaxed, very comfortable. Down into the corner he goes, and you're running about 190 miles an hour when he does that.
And I talked to his crew chief, Chad Knaus, this morning. He was a little confused because when they tested out here, their car wanted to push, not turn. They made a bunch of adjustments when they got ready to put in race practice, and he said they'd been fighting loose, and they'd been undoing all of their changes they made based on their test results.
Larry Foyt's gone a lap down. Now Kenny Schrader in the 49 trying to stay on the lead lap ahead of Jeff Gordon. Here's Matt.
Yeah, Mike, on the 48, Jimmy Johnson, he was telling his crew chief, Chad Knaus, he feels like he's built up the right front. He's also got a car that just isn't quite balanced right. He says the car is tight in 1 and 2, but loose, especially when it gets in the gas off turn 4.
Thanks, Matt.
I would say I would agree with that. Based on what I saw with his hands, the car is free because he's not turning the steering wheel a lot, which means that he's kind of nursing it. We can't see his foot, so we don't know if he's wide open or not. But I think based on what we saw with his hands, pretty free, pretty neutral race car he's got.
Jeff Gordon coming up into more traffic. Kyle Petty just ahead. Then Mike Skinner, Dave Blaney, and Mark Martin all in danger of going a lap down to Jeff Gordon.